Broadcast is live.
Broadcast is live. What's up, guys? Just had to get some technical issues sorted out with Roger's mic. I'll hop over here to YouTube, make sure everything is going. If you guys want to drop a comment and let us know that you're here and watching. So we got a few people on here. We'll give it just a couple more seconds.
Okay.
Get this posted over on Facebook.
There you go. I see you. I hear you. And let's see what else is on here. Yeah, no, it looks like it got some functionality going. I like it. Still haven't quite figured out where to look.
There we go. All right, we got about 10 people in here, so.
Right. Oh, you know what I'll do?
What's up, JRC? What's going on? Got Norman saying first. Welcome, Norman. Let's go ahead and get going then. Welcome to episode 2 of Let's Talk Art. First episode had on Drew Posa, and today excited to welcome Roger Andrews to the channel. What's going on, Roger?
Hey, what's going on? Thank you for having me.
Oh, yes.
I appreciate it.
Definitely. If you guys are not familiar, Roger's been actually featured a few times on the channel before with the weekly art challenge videos. He's active over in the Keep Creating group on Facebook as well, so you guys might already be familiar with his work. So just super glad to have you on today, taking the time out of your busy schedule to hop on here and give another voice to the art community on the channel. So
no, thank you, BJ. It's a pleasure and an honor, as they say.
Awesome. So
appreciate it.
I guess just starting out, for the people that don't know you, just kind of introduce yourself, kind of give a little bit about what you do for a career and start from there.
Sure. Again, my name is Roger Andrews. I am a commercial artist, essentially. I don't want to put myself in any kind of box. However, the world I sort of revolve in is illustration. And when I say illustration, I do mostly artwork for advertising agencies, video game companies. I do a lot of work for Hasbro. Actually, Hasbro is probably my primary client. So I do a lot of toy box design. I do a lot of figure design and play sets and game boards and, you name it, a lot of that stuff.
Awesome. So walking into the stores, people might have seen your work before just from shopping the toy aisle.
That's right. And if they're looking for it, I mean, it's funny. I've been doing it for so long. I lose sight on, how much product is actually on the shelves that I've had my hands in. It's pretty cool, actually.
Also, how long
very fortunate.
How long have you been working with Hasbro?
God, since the very, very early 2000s. I want to say maybe 2001, 2002-ish, somewhere in that range.
Gotcha.
If I had to guess. Yep, absolutely. And I actually, it's funny story how I got started for Hasbro. When I left art school, I got a job almost immediately in advertising. So I worked for an ad agency in Boston. Actually, I'm from the Boston area, if you're wondering, New Englander. And so when I got the job in Boston, I actually got asked from my alma mater, my art school, to come back and teach. And so when I did, I actually taught one of my prize students. He actually went on to get a job at Hasbro, and he remembered his old teach, Roger.
That's nice.
And he remembered me, and they had a project they were working on, and he thought of me for it, and he kind of was the one that first got my foot in the door. So my student was actually the first one who kind of got my career going in the toy and game industry, which is ironic.
That's awesome. What a cool story. Though. Yeah, for sure. So tell everybody about your background as far as education, stuff like that. You said you went to art school. You still there?
Oh, I think we lost BJ. Do I need to refresh, or what do we do?
I can still see me. You on there?
Oh, there we go. Got you back for a second.
Okay, so my question was, you talked about art school, like, kind of tell us about art school. Where'd you go? What was your experience with art school? Is it something that you recommend to budding artists in, say, maybe junior high or high school that are watching this? Is that the career path that you would recommend?
You know what? Ideally, I think it is best you got to get outside of yourself I mean, we, and you should know this as well as anyone else. It's a lot of art is very, it's very insular. It's very, it's individual. It's lonely in a lot of ways to be an artist. And I think oftentimes we get into our own heads and we're in our own studios and we're in our own creative environments. And I think it's best to break that and to take on some advice and some instruction from someone else. So it doesn't necessarily have to be an art school. However, I think there's a structure that you learn in art school. And so I would advise it for aspiring artists. And the art school I went to was a little teeny tiny art school called Butera School of Art. It was in Boston, Massachusetts. And I think at the time, my class was maybe 15 students.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it's not that it was like this crazy exclusive place. It's just the school was designed maybe like 75, 80 years ago, maybe more, as a sign painting school. So like hand lettering and painting on doors and boats and trucks and stuff like that. That's what it was. That's what the school's original intent was. And so they created, at some point, they created a commercial art department. And so ironically enough, I did both programs, which is kind of crazy. I graduated from both programs.
Very cool.
Yeah, cool. It's so essentially when you ask about art school, I think that is kind of like your building blocks. You get that there, and sure, now you could get a lot of that information from YouTube, specifically from the BJ Dell network. But obviously, when I went to school, it was like literally you kind of had to go to art school, so you had no choice. How about you? I mean, I don't know. Did you do arts? Did you go to art school as well?
I went to school for a while for graphic design.
Oh, you did? Okay.
It wasn't specifically, commercial art or anything like that. It was just an overall graphic design thing. And with me in the way that I work, I tend to do more illustration work.
Yep.
And this was strictly graphic design, no real illustration or anything like that. So it was, learning Photoshop and Illustrator, but it was more just the mechanics behind it than actually incorporating it to, drawing per se. So
it was like layouts and typography
exactly.
and all that stuff. Yeah,
yep,
I got you.
Exactly. So we've got JRC in the chat. He said he's from Los Angeles and is still an art student right now. So fantastic. He's traveling the road. Yeah, sure enough. So in addition to doing the work for Hasbro, though, and you talked about, learning from YouTube, you yourself have a channel on YouTube, Sketchygoichi.
Yes.
So I've got the link in the description too. If you guys are not subscribed to Roger's channel, check it out. He's got some awesome videos on there. But number one, where did Sketchygoichi, where'd the name come from? What's the background on that?
Actually, so it's an interesting little thing. There's a restaurant locally. I am in the southern part of Massachusetts, kind of near Cape Cod, in between Cape Cod and Rhode Island. So just south of Boston by 50, 60 miles. And there's a town in Rhode Island, I believe it's East Providence, that has a place called Ichie. And I always thought that name was really cool. It's kind of clever sounding. So I'd never know what it meant. Obviously, I knew it was Japanese, but I never know what it meant. So when I looked it up, it basically Ichigoichi in Japanese means like to sort of like if you go to a gathering or a party or something, and when you go, you need to sort of embrace the moment and sort of be present. And by that, when you do, it's like, because what you have to understand, you have to embrace the good times when they're here, because that moment is fleeting. It goes away. So Ichi essentially means live in the moment. And so I thought that was kind of cool and kind of clever. So I was like, I sketch all the time. So why don't I do a little play on that and call it Sketchygoichi? And if you ever watch my videos, I sign off every video when I say live your moment. And that's exactly what I want you to do with your art. For everyone who's watching, that's the inspiration I have. I live in the moment. I stay present with the art, and I think you get better results when you do.
That's awesome.
Right. That's
for sure. Yeah, and I didn't correlate that or know that. So it's awesome hearing the background. Cool. I can see how it ties in, and I think it's really cool with your videos. A lot of it is kind of that, just the whole idea and principles behind stuff. You really walk through the mindset behind creating a piece, which I think is awesome, and that definitely ties into that. So I can see where that came from. So yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, I'm glad you're picking up on that, because it's like I think as you well know, like being a YouTuber yourself, it's like oftentimes I think most people when they go to YouTube is for almost like how to, and it's to learn the specific techniques and the specific things about how to draft better, or how to fix an object, or even how to draw better. And I think that's important. I think we both do that in our video series. However, I thought like maybe if I got into the philosophy and the mindset of it, and I think maybe that might be beneficial for some who are, particularly those who are either struggling or trying to break through a certain plateau in their art. I thought maybe if I just kind of delved into that, I think it might be an interesting take or a different take on the how-to version of our art videos.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and speaking of the one series that you've got going on now is How Not to Suck at Art, which I think is awesome. And I remember you posting about it on Facebook before. That actually was something that you were doing for a panel at Comic-Con, if I'm correct in remembering. So
you are correct.
What is How Not to Suck at Art? What was the I guess the idea behind the Comic-Con panel, and talk about that for a little bit.
Right. So How to Not Suck at Art is every time I would do a comic book convention panel, or even if I set up shop as a creator in Artist Alley or whatever, a lot of artists would come to me, a lot of young artists with their portfolios, and they would put their art in front of me and they'd be like, oh, this sucks, and I'm terrible at drawing hands, and you know this, I'm terrible at drawing feet, and you know how it is. Like people are really critical, hypercritical. And it hit me. I was like, well, I guess what you're asking me is like, how do I not suck at art? Right? If you're asking me for advice, or you're asking any one of us who do these drawing how-to videos, it's like, yes, you want to know how to not suck at art. And I thought it just sounded a little, I mean, when you hear the term like how to not suck at art, it feels a little harsh, but I think it's apt. I think it there's a certain hook to that. There's a certain way that the syllables flow that make it sound like it's intriguing, and that's what I was going for. And the ultimate goal of it is really just to help people to kind of feel a little better about what they're doing, and hopefully it's something we all do. We can give people a little leg up and feel a little better about what they're creating. That's the goal. Mm-hmm.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and you've got, I think, 3 in the series right now. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm putting the 4th up today. As a matter of fact, as soon as we finish our discussion, I'm going to upload the 4th one. It's sort of a Kylo Ren piece that I've done. And it's actually Kylo Ren in a barber chair. He's getting clipped by like Chewbacca and Rey, and I think I might even have BB-8 in there. It's a fun little piece. That one's specifically about, I believe that one's about composition. Okay. Which, as you well know, how important composition is to like creating good art.
Oh, sure.
Right.
Yeah. Speaking of no spoilers, but did you see Star Wars yet?
I did indeed.
Did you like it?
I loved it. And at the end when they like
no spoilers.
No.
Just had to ask that. Yeah.
No. And you? Did you like it?
Yeah, I thought it was good. I liked it better than the last
hesitation
one.
in there. I don't know.
I liked it better than the last one. But yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. No. You know what's funny? It's like over the years I've become less and less critical of media in general, particularly stuff that like we grew up on, like Star Wars. Mm-hmm. And I think I'm a little more lenient, I guess to say, as a viewer. So if it's really entertaining to me, that's almost all I need. You know, it's like, all right, I paid my money. I had a good 3 hours or whatever, 2.5 hours, and I'm good. You know, it's crazy.
Yeah, and that's why I bring that up, because a lot of times in your work too, I see a lot of pop culture references in your work. Mm-hmm. So what influences you? Obviously, some pop culture stuff. Do you get influence or inspiration from other avenues? I know music is one, because you posted a Wu-Tang video the other day.
Yeah. Oh, you saw that. Okay, great.
What else kind of do you draw your inspiration from? Where do you get your ideas?
I think it's almost purely pop culture. I feel like I'm immersed in it, maybe because of, my job or my career is sort of like generating pop culture imagery. And I like it. I mean, I really do enjoy drawing, like you said, like drawing the Star Wars or the Wu-Tang. And as a matter of fact, I mean, I got a lot of positive response on that Wu-Tang, particular Wu-Tang video. So I'm thinking I've done a couple of other, like not a couple, I've done like hundreds of other pop culture figures. I think I'll post more of those. And it's like, that is, I think my primary source of inspiration is pop culture. It is Star Wars, it's Marvel Comics, it's DC, it's, it's Stranger Things. It's all the stuff that we all sort of like are immersed in. And I really, I feel like I'm tapping, like I'm in a mine, like mining for material that like everyone else can access. And I feel it's universal. I'm sure you feel the same way.
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%. So we got a question from Davey. This is more kind of a technical question, but if it's something that you want to kind of address or talk about, he said that a lot of times he gets on and searches, how to achieve a technique rather than, looking at the overall mindset behind it. And he said he loves the stylized art like Sea of Thieves. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. Sea of Thieves,
No.
The game for the Xbox. It's done by Rare, so it has kind of a cartoon quality. If you think Team Fortress from the
Okay.
Orange Box, Half-Life, I don't know if you know that art style, or it almost has like the hard edge Disney Infinity look to it. If you remember the
Okay.
Disney Infinity
So
toys
is it
that were
more?
out.
Is it like angular
More,
and
yeah,
faceted? Okay.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
gotcha.
he says they have a huge team of people who all do the same style for the game, and I want to have the same style. So I'm trying to see if there's a few pointers I could get to achieve the flat edges look, the weathered and worn effect on cartoony items that I paint.
Oh, okay. So he's adding the extra. He wants to know the technique for the render, like how to achieve that
Almost,
rendered
almost
effect.
that. Yeah.
Right.
Sounds like more of that question, and then the overall art style.
Right. So I'm kind of familiar with the sort of the sketch, the render, the
Mhm.
underdrawing part of it. In terms of the technique, I imagine it's probably a brush selection thing, right?
Mhm.
I imagine, right? There's probably like an ideal brush that achieves that sort of textured look. But in terms of creating the faceted quality to it, I think it's all in the study. Like you have to really, and obviously if you're a fan, so you're well aware of like how to find it, and how to find various images. I think it's the study of it, it's the analysis of it, it's literally putting that image up of your favorite character rendered in that style and rendering over that and kind of getting a sense of like how they generate the angles and what they do to create volume. And in my opinion, that's probably one of the better ways to do it. You really have to study it and kind of
Mhm.
render it over and over again.
Yeah, and a lot of
How
it,
would you suggest?
I would say the same thing too. And looking at art and judging other people's art and wanting to do the same style. Number one, like you said, it really starts with the basics.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of putting the cart before ahead of the horse type of thing
Yeah.
with
Mm-hmm.
this. I want to learn how to render. Well, first I would just say start out trying to get the technique down if that's what you're looking for.
Right.
And then past that, you've got to think too, with it being a video game, a lot of that stuff's going to be rendered with like ZBrush or something like that. It's not going to
Right.
be just a drawing program per se. So looks like it's made out of clay. Well, a lot of that probably is done in ZBrush to where it has that almost sculpted look to it.
Okay.
So I know something else that kind of ties in to that. JRC says, how do you get, see guys, how did you get your own style of art?
Right.
So,
Well,
and
I
that
mean,
kind of ties into
yeah,
that too. So how did you get your own style of art? And then I think that can almost be tied into the previous question, but
sure. The funny thing about style of art, I find, and you probably find this the same as well, BJ. It's like the development of a personal style is a collection, sort of all the all the influences, all the pop culture, and all the influences that you've absorbed over the many decades, or if you've just started over the one decade, um, and you feed your brain with all that imagery, right? All of those cartoons, all of those movies, all of those books, and all that media, right? And what happens is I don't know if the brain ever forgets anything truly, right? Especially stuff that you really love.
mhm.
And then you have to render a ton, right? You have to draw. And I think in time, if you study specific artists that you like, you study their technique, I think in time your natural inclination, your natural technique starts to emerge. Don't you find that to be the case? Like
Yeah,
you can
100%.
love
Yeah.
an artist, you can mimic their style, and you might even become proficient at mimicking their style. But at some point, the way your hand renders things, the way your brain fires to your synapses, I think it honestly your own style will eventually emerge.
Mhm.
At least that's been my experience.
100%. Yeah, I totally agree. And that's why, and I think I've talked about this in previous videos. Before when I was starting out, I would sit down with comic books and try
Mm-hmm.
to get the exact style down. I wanted to be drawing exactly like Todd McFarlane or Jim Lee.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And, it's really discouraging as an artist starting out. You can learn, some anatomy and stuff like that, from the drawings, but these guys are professionals, And if you're just, learning and starting out and you're always comparing yourself to somebody that does this professionally, it's going to be kind of, disheartening. You're going to feel lost. You're not going to feel as productive, or you're making as much, changes and progress in your art. So that's why, like with Davey's question, that it's cool to look for other artists for inspiration, but trying to get that exact look, that exact knockoff of it is, I don't think, the best way to approach stuff, just because like I said, you're just going to be kind of met with disappointment.
Right.
Like that with that, you're, like you said, he's looking to learn how to draw like that, but then also looking how to get the end technique and stuff like that. And if you're always looking for that next person to kind of mimic, like I said, it's better to use, like you said, the culmination and let just the overall, I guess, pool of artists and pool of inspirations kind of wash over you, so you get that one style that's yours.
Right.
And that's
it needs
what I
to be
found.
an entry, right? That needs to be the entry point into developing your style. That can't be, essentially, you're doing someone else's style. If that's the end goal, I don't know that should be the end goal. I think maybe that's the entry point. That's all right. Let me learn how that artist does that, and then start to adapt and start to form and start to morph into something that's a little more uniquely you. Wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep. So speaking of, though, do you have any other artists that have kind of shaped or molded you? Do you have those, favorites that you kind of go back to?
Absolutely. Again, I'm a bit older, so like I came up in an era of like traditional pulp comic books that you actually tangibly held. I came up in an era where it's like, I used to read comics where Jack Kirby was still alive, and like John Buscema was still alive, and and then you refer to like Todd McFarlane and Jim Lee. Like that was like my formative years. Like that sort of Image Comics era was my formative years. Even Rob Liefeld and all those guys, that people they pan Rob Liefeld, but in reality, that dynamic form of art influenced so many artists of a certain age. But yeah, so like I used to love Mark Silvestri. I used to love, you name it. I mean, artists of the 70s, 80s, and 90s were kind of like comic book artists of that era were really formative for me. And earlier too. I mean, I mentioned Jack Kirby. Jack Kirby's from from the 40s through the 70s. So, but that dynamic, I guess my point is like dynamic art to me was like the most influential, and hopefully it's reflected in my art now. Maybe all of that's been absorbed into my DNA. How about you? I'm curious. Like, you said you love to illustrate and you got into graphic design. Like, are there style influences that you really love?
Yeah, 100. I mean, back to the Image Comics, that was my formidable years too. So, going to the comic store every week, and the Image just was a totally new thing for the industry. It was exciting. And, Rob Liefeld, he was in a Levi's commercial,
I remember
when is a comic book artist or an artist, in a Levi's commercial? So that was just told you how huge.
I'm pretty sure it was directed by Spike Lee too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Yeah. Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
So stuff like that was just crazy. Growing up, Jim Davis doing Garfield, Bill Watterson doing Calvin and Hobbes, stuff like that. And then like newer stuff, Scotty Young right now is my favorite.
Scotty, yeah.
Currently doing stuff that's kind of a big name. If you guys haven't checked him out, definitely look at him. But and with him, you can see like the influences from Bill Watterson and his inking style. So it's kind of, instead of, like I said, just mimicking a style, just taking little bits and pieces to make it your own. So another one of the questions in here, Alvin asked, let's see, I'm self-taught, no certification, no qualifications, no nothing. But is there any chance I can get into the art industry?
Right. Great question. The funny thing about art, and I think the cool thing about art, and I've said cool like 5 times, so forgive me, I'm gonna come up with another another adjective. But the impressive thing about art is like, I don't know that you necessarily need a degree, qualifications, certification of any kind to break into the industry. This is one thing that's great about it is talent rules, work ethic rules, and relatability and professionalism rule in this industry. So I've been around a lot of super, super talented artists. I've shared tables and booths with folks at Comic Cons and things that are like so proficient and so professional and immensely talented. And that's why they get work, and that's how they broke in. It's not necessarily about a degree. And which is a shame for me to say, because I just started teaching at the university, UMass, this semester. I say to my students, it's like, it's all about like the art you deliver ultimately at the end of the day, and certainly if you can deliver it on time. And if you're someone people want to work with, that's a huge part of it. No one ever really talks about. If you're a good person that people want to work with and you deliver quality art, you're going to get the call. And that it almost means you have to kind of develop your personal side of it alongside your art.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
There's definitely a customer service side to it, 100%. And on top of that too, it's knowing how to talk to clients. It's also then knowing how to be able to kind of stand up for yourself during the client process, but at the same time, not do it in a belligerent way. So it's kind of a nice balance between the two. It's definitely something you've got to do. And then Alvin also said, other than improving, what can he do, like exposure wise?
You mean in terms of finding clients,
finding the client, or getting the job, or breaking into the industry? Do you have any suggestions with that?
Well, the first thing I'm going to say is like a bit of a disclaimer about the breaking in process. The reality is there's a finite amount of spots in this world. I don't know what the number is. It changes, it fluctuates, it gets higher and lower. But there's a limited amount of spots. There's a limited amount of available jobs, and there are almost seemingly an unlimited amount of artists looking for those same jobs. So in order to stand out, I mean, we discussed having an original style, or maybe in some cases having a house style that is attractive. And there is no, I'll be honest with you, there is no silver bullet on how to break through and how to become super successful in this and get a ton of work. However, you do have to at least try by, having your own Instagram. I think that's probably a big part of it. So you have to have a platform. You have to have a place to be able to present your art almost in a portfolio manner. You have to be engaged. You have to probably leave comments on other people's art and direct message, and maybe form your own YouTube channel. Maybe you have, if you have something new and unique to offer, maybe you do that as well. But that's what I would suggest. You have to use the available resources that we have at this date and time, because it's so difficult to get those small amount of available jobs.
And the other thing I would piggyback off that and say too is don't give up if you start the Instagram or the YouTube or what have you. I mean, it's going to take time to catch on. You're going to get countless hours spent on doing stuff and uploading stuff to not get it seen by anybody. So definitely at the beginning, understand that that's the way it's going to go. So definitely stick with it, keep plugging away. Like you said, Instagram's great. And like you said, just being engaging and opening up, like I said, the comments, talking to people, like you said, stuff like that, I think goes a long way. And then I know somebody else asked, speaking of posting stuff, they asked about Facebook. Somebody said about how can you post your art on Facebook without getting it compressed? I know with that, there's a setting on Facebook that when you go to upload, you'll have to click that.
Right. Have you? I don't know if I've ever had an issue with the compression on the art.
I know some people, not really. I know some people have, but yeah, it's a setting on your Facebook, just the regular Facebook upload settings. So definitely check that out. But yeah, I would say Instagram's awesome. Doing stuff like Roger's doing with the the pop art stuff. I think that's one of the best things to do, is to do stuff that's in the pop culture zeitgeist that people want to see. I know a lot of people post, just random stuff that they make or draw. And obviously if people are searching for, let's say a Kylo Ren piece, they have a chance of seeing your stuff, rather than if you draw, just a sunset or, something like that. Obviously, I wouldn't focus all that and just try to spam stuff. Definitely branch out and try other things. But I think the pop culture thing definitely gets some eyes on there. Fan art is awesome for that, because people are always searching for it. So
absolutely, especially if it was like a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and you had done a piece of Baby Yoda, you're gold. You would have got all the exposure you would ever need of a Baby Yoda from The Mandalorian. That's all you needed to do. you know, or current, like you said, like you suggested, if you did a piece like today on with Star Wars Rise of Skywalker version of Rey, for instance, or Kylo Ren, or like you know you had mentioned. I mean, here's the thing: if you're gonna draw anyways, right? I'm assuming if you're an artist, you love to draw. You're gonna draw anyways. Draw something pop culture related and see, you know, and see what is current, and maybe anticipate. Maybe do something, you know, just everyone. It's so easy to go on the internet now and find out what the next movie is coming out or the next cool series coming out is, and just do some images based on that. I mean, you're gonna draw anyways, right?
Exactly.
Right? It should be fun, right?
Yeah. One other question. Let's see. Unicorns and Zombies. We got Jason on here. He says, how do you both go about not being able to get what's in your head to come out through your hands? Probably have to relate more to your early years and learning your style. So how do you do that? How do you get what's in here down here?
Uh-oh.
Are you with me?
I can't hear you. Oh, no, I can't hear you.
I can hear you.
Oh, man.
Uh-oh.
Let's see what happened. Let me refresh. See if that helps. Darn it, I lost you. Oh, no.
We're back.
I lost you.
Let me know in the comments. Is it, can you guys hear me, or is it Roger you can't hear? Can you hear us both?
Darn it. I lost you.
Is it mine? Is it just me now, guys? Can you hear me? We'll give Roger a second to maybe jump back in here. Okay, so I'll go through the comments. We'll see what else we got here. So back to that question as far as getting what's in your head down to paper. With that, honestly, there's no magic silver bullet, like Roger said earlier with that. I know this is kind of a cop-out way to say it, but it's honestly more just daily drawing, daily practicing. I know a lot of people have kind of that block of getting what's up here down there, and it can be frustrating. But you know, just constantly practicing, constantly just trying every day. That's the biggest thing that I can recommend, is just that daily, you know, trial and error process. That is my cop-out response, and I know that doesn't really tell you much. Let's see. Oh, looks like Roger's down. Hold on. Hey, are you back? Okay.
I'm back. You know what happened is I got a call.
Oh, okay, and it killed it. Gotcha.
It killed the whole thing. Sorry about that, guys.
Gotcha. So I threw my 2 cents as far as how do you get what's in your head down on paper?
Oh, okay.
Or down through your hand. What's your response to that? I had a pretty crappy cop-out answer, but
that's right. Well, I mean, here's the thing. Like, if you want to be, if you want to do anything visual, be a visual artist. I teach my students this at the university. Big shout out to UMass Dartmouth, the illustration department. I actually tell them to think visually, meaning like oftentimes people will write something out in a text, or they'll write it down in a note, or they'll write it down in any other fashion. But I try to do things visually. So like if you're constantly sort of doodling, allowing that thought to manifest itself through an image, you're training your brain to present those images on paper or on the iPad or whatever the end form of media is. So think visually and use your hand to express it. That's what I would suggest. If you get in the habit of doing that, you can't help but get better. You can't help but draw a quicker connection between what thoughts fire through your brain and what come through your hand. If that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Then Davey says, is a good idea to research trending arts and try to learn that style, so you're a good asset to generate different types of art.
Well, you know what? I think we touched on this a little bit. the reality is another thing about the industry is, yes, if say you're a video game company and you have a house style, there's a certain style that is represented in the development of that video game, whether it be through the characters or the environments, right? So you have a house style. I think if I'm an art director at one of those video game companies and some artist comes in with a style that differs from that, but it's cool and it's dynamic and it's unique, I don't care that it matches a specific style set. I think you have to do you. As a matter of fact, I think that was number one in my my how to not suck at art advice. You have to do what inspires you, what makes you want to get up in the morning. You have to do that. If you don't do that, and you're trying to shoehorn what you like to render into this, this square peg in this round hole, and you're trying to, you're sapping some of that creative energy, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Some people are natural. Some people are able to sort of, take their thoughts and apply, like it's almost like they apply a filter. It's like, oh, I'm just going to render in that style, and that's great if you can do that. But I think when you're developing, I think you got to kind of do you for a while, and develop all the structural stuff, all the framework and all the foundational stuff. I think you need to do that first, and then worry more specifically about style afterwards. That's what I would suggest.
And I think the other point too is once you have a style or once you come up with a style, and that's why it's so important is, I mean, that style kind of represents you. So people are asking about, how to get out there and exposure and doing Instagram and posting online. I think one of the biggest things that you can do with that is make sure you have a cohesive style. I see a lot of artists that are just starting out, and when they start throwing stuff up, it looks like 30 different people drew 30 different things. So if you're to the point that, you're wanting to start to post to get exposure, I would say, look at your stuff and see if it looks like it's all done by the same person. Even if it's, kind of a different style, it should still kind of have your touch on it. Right. And I think kind of looking at your art there and knowing if yours has that feel to it is kind of a good, I guess, reference point that if you're kind of ready to start sending out feelers to companies or, sending out your portfolio and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. I think that's essential. It's doing you, and it's also trying to, and you have to kind of be self-critical as well. Right. And maybe that's another good aspect of posting stuff on Instagram or other social media sources. You open yourself up, you become a little vulnerable to other people's critiques and other people's opinions. And sometimes you get some really constructive critiques. And so if you're open to it and you're not overly sensitive about it, I think there's a lot of benefit there, in my opinion.
Yeah. And that's one thing too, not to kind of plug that, but keep creating the group over on Facebook.
Love it.
That's been helpful for a lot of people just because the feedback is so positive and constructive. It's not mean, it's not, hateful. And if people are willing to kind of take the lessons and the critiques that people give them and work on stuff, I think that's important. So if you guys haven't joined that, definitely hop on over to Facebook and join the group over there. Start sharing your work, because it's just cool to see, what people share, and it's cool to have that community that's so supportive in this day and age of, trolls on Facebook and just crappy comments all over the internet. It's kind of nice. So
yeah, that's a wonderful environment you've created there, and I shout that out to my students and anyone else who's interested in art. I think another factor beyond having a nice, safe community for people to kind of share and express their thoughts and their art is the prompts that you do. And that's a big, I don't know if people, I think people underestimate the idea of having almost like you give someone a mission in a way, right? When you provide that prompt. And for me, I don't always have the time to do them. I would probably do one every single time you put one up. I don't always have the time to do one, but if you do, it's like you've given someone an assignment in the most gentle way possible. It's not, there's no mandate. There's, you're not getting graded. There's, no one's losing any money. Mm-hmm. But I love the idea of having a prompt, and I respect you and the amount of time and the effort you put into.
Oh, thanks.
And not only creating the prompts, and then and doing your review show, which I watch every time they come on, every video when you do the review videos, and the constructive criticism give during in the reviews. And it's always positive. I think everything you've presented to anyone who's submitted a prompt is super positive, and I admire it, and I appreciate them.
That's what I try. Thanks. I appreciate that. I think the thing with the prompts too, that I don't really talk about it and don't like correlate it that much. But if you think about the prompts, and understandable if you don't have a lot of time, and if it's something that you can't do every week. But I really urge you guys that if you are looking to maybe do a career in art, if you're looking to work with clients and stuff like that, take part in those prompts. If it's a week that, I hate to draw that stuff, or I don't know anything about that stuff, so I'm going to skip this week, or that's not really in my wheelhouse. That's kind of what they're there for, because once you start working with clients, that's what, you have to deal with. You have to draw stuff that you might not be usually used to drawing. So, doing a prompt like that, like you said, it's the easiest way to kind of ease yourself into it. It's not something that you're going to get graded on or fired or lose a job over, but it's a way to get you out of the comfort zone. So if it is something, like I said, that you're not used to drawing, just do it anyways. If you're looking to do like a career in art, just because that's part of the whole client work that you're going to have to deal with. So
right, and to be honest with you, that's actually no one talks about it, but that's the lion's share of the work. The lion's share of the work is a lot of stuff you don't necessarily want to draw. I mean,
Yep.
I know there's a lot of students, maybe you graduate from Cal Arts and you get a job working at Blizzard, and, and everything's all good. That's great. But for the most people, you're drawing, like when I got out of school, I was drawing like, ads for, TV storyboards for bank commercials, or, or retail shops, or, I've drawn like just about every Subway commercial for years and years and years, Subway subs commercial for years and years and years, and AT&T and all these other companies. It's like, yes, it's great, it's good money, and it pays the bills, but it's like, I'd much rather be drawing Kylo Ren, I'll be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm thankful to Hasbro, and Lucas Licensing for giving me the opportunity to do so.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I think a lot of people kind of glorify the artist or working in the industry and stuff like that. But like you talked about, the limited number of spaces open, and even going and breaking it down further, the number of spaces open that you're going to be doing something that you probably like doing are not that much.
Yeah,
because
you've really scaled it down.
Yeah, you're going to be doing stuff that's a lot of artists are going to hate, and like, I'm a sellout, or I don't want to do this, and I wanted to draw for a living, but now I'm doing this. So that's definitely something to consider if you're getting into the art field, that a lot of times, client's a client and a job's a job, and it might not be the most glamorous thing you've ever, drawn. Right. So
no, and ultimately, and here's a thing. Here's another one I tell the students. I'll share with your audience. It's like, when you're in a situation like that, where you're rendering something that you don't necessarily want to draw, and it's for a client, it's on deadline, you get that job done, and guess what? You have all the other hours in the day to do what makes you feel good, and what you're passionate about rendering. You dedicate your time and energy fully to that assignment. You accomplish that goal, and then you spend the rest of the time doing what you love to draw anyways. Like, as an artist, you're not limited. So if that's the case, yes, peel off a little bit of energy to draw something that's not necessarily in your wheelhouse, and then pour the rest into your own personal passion. In my opinion, that's the way to go.
Yeah, and the other thing that I would recommend to people, and I've talked about before on the channel, as far as making money with your art and stuff like that, there's so many avenues that you can actually, make a living or make money from your art online. You don't necessarily have to work for a company, or you don't have to send out all these feelers and try to get jobs. There's still ways out there that you can work for yourself, and definitely look at those. I've talked before on the channel about like doing merch by Amazon and KDP, a lot of the print on demand platforms. There's, in this day and age with the internet too, there's so many ways to put yourself out there. So, don't
coloring books, I hear, are a great thing.
Coloring books are awesome. Yep,
that's sure what enough. I heard.
Sure enough. So
I heard from a reliable source. That's a good one. If you can do it well.
Yeah, definitely look at it and see. Don't limit yourself to thinking, I've got to move to New York or LA and work for a company there. A lot of stuff, and I'm sure you do now, is all online as far as back and forth with the client. So
right, yeah,
that's one of the benefits of freelance.
It is. I'm sitting in my studio, if you will. I'm in my home. I get up and I'm drawing in. I get up, I'm drawing in my shorts. In the morning. It's like I never anticipated that. To be honest with you, coming up, I always assumed I'd be in an art studio, like you said, in New York or in LA or in Boston. And I did for a time. I did when I got out of art school, and I realized very quickly that it's well, it takes a lot of discipline to do it, but once you choose to go freelance, and if you're able to sustain yourself, it's a pretty darn good life. It's
Mhm.
not a bad way to go. It's a lot of responsibility, as you well know, right? And
Yeah.
you know,
A lot of self-discipline too when you don't,
yes.
have somebody cracking the whip or expecting you
Mm-hmm.
to punch a clock. If you're not that type of person that has self-discipline, it's going to be rough. So,
Could be rough. It could be
yeah.
a lot of ramen noodles.
Yeah, sure enough.
That's
So
right.
what do you do if you with personal projects, if you hit like a wall of creative block or stuff like that, what do you do to get out of that?
You know what? Again, this is gonna sound off. I don't necessarily get writer's block or creative block. I'm wondering if that is a matter of mental approach. Maybe what others would see as a blockage or would see as a hurdle, I don't view it as such. Yes, I get assignments that are challenging, and yes, the ideas don't flow as great as others. But I don't know. Maybe I just don't allow it. I just will refuse to not push through. So I guess if there's an answer to that question, would be just push through.
Mhm.
I know it's again that's probably my cop out answer. I'm sorry to say, but I don't get writer's block and creative block. If you present to me a blank sheet of paper or a blank screen on the iPad, I'll fill it with something.
Mhm.
And I'm not. I guess maybe there's a level of confidence that comes from rendering so much so often. I feel like I've got a reservoir of images, pop culture or otherwise, to draw from. So maybe that would be a piece of advice. I mean, maybe you fill your brain and you fill your creative pan with more material. So that way, if you need to, it's almost like a freestyle. If you're a freestyle rapper, the best freestyle rappers have filled their brains with everything that's going on in the world. They read, they study, they watch TV, they watch movies. Like so, they have again a reservoir of ideas to come off the top of the dome with. If that
Mhm.
makes sense.
Yep,
Right.
100%.
So that's the
Alvin,
way.
yeah, Alvin asks, how often should one fill up the sketchbook? Do you always do loose sketches in between loose and detailed? What kind of mindset when we are into these two?
All right. So from my perspective, it's yes, you do want to fill up a sketchbook. Everyone has a different approach. Some people will draw a little tiny like image in the corner of one page, and 3 or 4 pages later they'll do another tiny image. Some people will do these grand pieces that extend across the spread of the book and onto other pages. Some people will rip pages out and put them into other books. For me, I look at the sketchbook as almost like as a practice field. Like I don't necessarily do fully rendered images in my sketchbook, so I've got a collection of them, like most artists. And if you look at my book, sometimes it's a bunch of little random images, and I have this weird spatial thing that I do where I like to fill the pages with imagery. So
Mhm.
if I'm drawing, say for instance, if I'm drawing like an original character, I'll draw a couple of full body positions, a couple of action poses, a couple of headshots, and I'll fill the page with those images. I wish I had one in front of me. I'd show you what I
Yeah.
have in mind, but what I'm trying to present to you. But everybody has a different approach, and yes, I do suggest filling a sketchbook. How about you?
Yeah, definitely. I think everybody's kind of workflow changes over the years, and
Mm-hmm.
especially now with digital art being as big as it is, I don't necessarily draw as much in a sketchbook as what I used
Mm-hmm.
to, just because just nothing more than the cost factor of it, rather than buying these sketchbooks and I can just sit and draw over and over again, on the
Yeah,
iPad and clear it out and save it and whatever else. But yeah,
sure.
I just like you, I've got a whole collection of sketchbooks in my closet, and you never know. Like sometimes you'll come up with the best idea in one of those sketchbooks that turns into, a character, or an idea, or a story, or that's
Right.
where some of my best stuff's come from. So, but same thing with you. I do more just sketch work in it. I don't really do finished detailed pieces,
Mm-hmm.
just because I like to keep it more loose. So
Right. Yeah. Don't you feel like it's you're less inhibited, and I
mhm,
think because you've taken the pressure off yourself by
right.
keeping it loose and sketchy in the book.
Mhm,
Even if you're someone who renders in paint, like I've seen, some of my students will render like they render with watercolor, and so I want to tell them like, yeah, that piece you're rendering in the sketchbook doesn't have to be the final thing.
Mhm.
You know, you can do 3 or 4 or 5 of those, and then maybe get a nice sheet of illustration board and do that final, or watercolor paper or whatever, and then do that final image, or scan it in and then digitally render it. Use the sketchbook for what I think it's intended to sketch.
Mhm. Sure enough. Let's see if we got any other questions. I think that's about it for
Cool.
questions. So
All
we're
right.
going
That's
and
nice
nearing
setup. Cool.
in on the hour mark here. So anything else that you have that you want to talk about or touch on?
Well, I mean, I think we touched on pretty much all of it. I did, however, want to thank those who have migrated over from your audience over to mine. Every time you've done a prompt and you've reviewed one of my contributions, it's always kind of boosted my subscriber base over on YouTube on the Sketchygoichi. I appreciate that. I also appreciate those friends and family and people, local folks who just I I said, hey, check out the YouTube channel, and they subscribed and enjoyed it, and they passed it on, and it's pretty amazing. You hear about the term viral, and it sounds so negative when you think about a
Yeah.
virus, but
Right.
but there's an aspect to that I think is really kind of cool about what we do.
Mhm.
You present it out there, and someone likes it, and then they send it to their friend, and they like it, and it kind of grows from there. And I appreciate you, and I appreciate you kind of giving me a platform, whereas I'm kind of an anonymous guy. Even though I'm, like you said, I'm on the toy shelves. It doesn't say Roger Andrews presents,
Yeah.
Hasbro games.
Yeah. Well, that's always
I
kind of been my
appreciate you.
goal. Thanks. That's kind of been my goal with this. And the more subscribers that I get and stuff like that, it's making me more excited, just because it's kind of been my goal with this to kind of highlight other artists, give other artists a platform, doing the weekly art challenges, being able to show people's artwork there. But then stuff like these interviews, we had Drew on last time, like I talked
Right.
about, having you on here, and, just driving some people over to you guys too. And opening up people's eyes to, like I said, another voice in the art community. And that's kind of what I want to achieve with all this. And it feels good to, like I said, be able to get other people some exposure too. I know some artists are very protective, and they're like, oh, I built this and I don't want, anybody else to take part in it. But for me, like, art's art, and I love meeting creative people and stuff like that. So it's been fantastic, talking back and forth since we met, and, other artists that I met down the line. It's just been a really rewarding experience. So that's kind of what I wanted to get out of this, is, push some people in your direction. We've got and I can't see the screen right now because I hopped over. So in the description, we've got your website, which is a new one under construction, sketchygoichi.net. You've also got your illustration site, which is, was it
Rand 247, RAND 247. That actually is kind of a repository of sort of the toy and game stuff and some advertising stuff. So if you're curious about what that looks like, it's Rand, RAND 247.com.
And I've got that in the description for the video, along with the links to your YouTube channel. You've got Facebook on there. We've got Instagram and your LinkedIn page as well. So
all about that business.
Yeah, that's where everybody can find you. So just want to thank everybody that watched the video today, everybody that commented. You guys are awesome. Also, special thanks to Roger for joining me for this hour-long interview. Super fun.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Again, it's like, and your audience is definitely beneficiary of what you're putting down. Just know that all those hours are well spent that you put into this.
All right, guys. So until next time, keep creating. And what's your...
Sketchygoichi, live your moment. Happy
There we go,
sketching,
guys.
y'all.
Merry Christmas, guys. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.